The time Paul Sykes faced Brighton's Tom Kiely, in my opinion, was an incredibly dangerous fight. It was just before he faced John Gardner, and probably it was a huge risk for little reward because it would have scuppered his chances of coming up to face a title fight. Brighton's Tom Kiely. John Spenceley said to me he was one of them type of people that would have made Muhammad Ali look bad. Big, awkward southpaw, always standing on your feet, that kind of type. And as an actual fighter, he was no mug. He'd already beaten Neil Malpass by this point. He'd also beaten Danny McAlinden, who was he was the Commonwealth heavyweight champion. So Tom Kiely, really, he was a fight, but Sykes insisted on doing it. I spoke to Tom about 2.5 years ago for that book, and he he gave his side on Paul Sykes. It was very brief. He said to me he come up for the fight, which was in Bradford in the April of 1979. He came up actually with the commentator for the BBC, Reg Guttridge. There was a famous guest for the week. I think Red Rum had just won the Grand National. So it was a bit of like a celebrity ball. Lots of famous people were there. And Tom said to me, he said, back in them days, fighters would weigh on the morning of the fight. It's not like today where you get 36 hours. So he met Paul Sykes at the weigh-in, seeing all his gangster friends there. He said to me there was the likes of Alex Steen there, Delroy Showers. He said there was absolutely hordes full of literally the biggest villains in Britain. And he said the fight himself was over, I think it was over 8 rounds. Paul Sykes was the winner, although Tom said he lost. Soddy said he was close and he thought he had it. The scorecard suggests otherwise. I've spoken to people who were at a fight who said Sykes was just basically trying to take his head off of every shot, and Tom Kiely was just being very negative, kind of clinging, being, I suppose, a wily old pro, and his experience kind of got him through it because Sykes was knocking a few people out at that time. And he said to me, it was a really interesting one. He said to me, you know something? He said, I'm 66 years old now. He said, considering I only met Paul Sykes once on the morning of the fight, and when we had the fight, he said, in actual fact, as soon as I got changed, he said, I wanted to go and speak to him, get a few photos, you know, like, and just trade off, you know, experiences of the fight. And he said, I never got anywhere near him. He was literally dragged off by gangsters and off to nightclubs in Wakefield. But he said a really interesting point, which he said today. He said, I look in the mirror. He said, I'm 66 years old now. I've been retired for many, many years. Probably, I think he retired about, fight was 79. I'm sure he was retired early 80s. So he's been retired now, kicking on for 40 years. And he's 66 is Tom Kiely or Tom Kiely. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. And he said, I look in the mirror now. And he said, when I look with no clothes on, I've got a scar on my chest. And he said that was in a clinch. Obviously, Paul, he'd heard all about the hard man tag and all this. And but although Paul Sykes was a very good pugilist, he took that animal instinct, that Neanderthal thuggish in with him. And that just proves, because you're talking now, 42 years? And that guy, Tom Kiely, looks in the mirror and he's got a big bite mark on his chest to this day, 66-year-old. And it's a firm reminder of when he met the wild man of Wakefield. Just a quick note on the film. We got really good feedback in December from the film company, and it's looking to be all go when the world goes back to normal. Von Civil and Western Edge Pictures are really excited about it, and a lot of money is going to be shot. A lot of people think, it's not going to happen and all this, and You know, listen, that would have already happened in September, COVID. It's just what? I mean, it's been 3.5 years now. But obviously, it's not a great deal of time in the film world. You know, they had, oh, I think they did some. They did the Oscar Pistorius film, which they finished, was in front of that. The Billy Piper thing they'd done, that was in front of that. They're doing something now with Paul Gascoigne. What's the other one? And another jockey. But that's only because they're not allowed out in the world, so they can all do it in the studios, if you like. But Paul Sykes, the film and the documentary, is going to be a huge project. £2 million. At the funding's all there. So there's a lot of people asking me over the years. But yeah, it is happening. But that was just Tom Kiely's, or Kiely, I don't know how to pronounce it. That was his experience, if you like, of Paul Sykes. And as I said, he met the guy once. He did 8 rounds of him. Bit of a wrestling match. Managed to go the distance with Sykes when Sykes was knocking everyone out. Very, very good fighter as well, by all accounts. And I've done my research. Tom, he was a tricky one. And he said to me, he said, John L. Gardner avoided him. I'm not sure how true that is. He certainly, I don't think there was many heavyweights that would have went out the way to face him, because although he never had any titles, but he was one of them where you got little rewards if you beat him, and he certainly was a contender. So yeah, but today, about 66 years old. So he fought Paul Sykes when he was 24, and as I said, he looks in the mirror now, and he's got teeth marks of old Sykesy there. But if anyone wants to read Tom Kiely, forgive me, someone would pick me up on that. But if anyone wants to read the former Brighton heavyweights chapter, it's in that book, which is in Amazon, eBay, or Waterstones. And yeah, it's quite an insightful one. As I said, that book's 34 chapters, and out of them all, that's the most accurate account, because obviously the first one, you've got your celebrities, if you like, your Johnny Nelsons, your Charles Bronsons, your Glenn McCrory's, your Eddie Richardsons, where that book, I made a point of specifically only using like people from the Lupset estate and people in prison with him, police officers. So that's a much more accurate account of who the man was. So thank you so much for listening to my silly nonsense drabbles, and don't forget to click and subscribe. That book actually, can I just say, supports the Bradley Lowry Foundation. So a lot of good comes out of that. I know he did a lot of bad in his life, and I have actually had people say to me, how could you put a monster like that with a little angel? But it's supported. That book's been out now 3.5 years, coming up for 4, and it's done a lot of good. It's raised a lot of money for sick children, so some good does come out of it. But yeah, that's just a little story on when Paul Sykes faced Brighton's Tom Kiely. Thank you so much. God bless.